Hi there, and welcome to the text section of EDDL 5131. So this is a short screencast just to point out a few things. You'll have had access or links to tutorials for using the portfolio portion of your site here, which is essentially a WordPress blog that each of you has that you can use throughout all the courses in this program. But there's also a couple of sort of extra tricks that I wanted to make sure you were aware of. So take a look starting from here at the text page. When you go to write a new blog post for your portfolio, you can navigate to your blog and do it, but you also will have this little plus button right up here if you're logged in. And if I select that, I'm going to go to Post. And I can add a title, and I'm going to grab some text, and I'm going to paste it in. So in WordPress, you will have a visual editor like this, and another tab that gives you HTML. In the visual editor, you'll find there's a number of formatting buttons, and if you put in a hard return, you're actually going to have your next line starting off as a new paragraph. So this is pretty straightforward. One thing that you need to be able to know how to do is linking in WordPress. And so if I grab some text here, so if I grab the word semantic and I want to link it to, let's say, to the Wikipedia article, then up here, use this little edit thing. I'm going to paste the link for that in. I'm going to use this tool here to give me a little bit more options. One of them is I want to open the link in a new tab. And this is a good practice. If you're linking to something outside of the website or blog that you're in, you should have it open in a new tab. So hit update. So that should be linked now. And we'll do one more. I'm going to grab the link for visual rhetoric. Oops, that doesn't work. There we go. And I'm going to save a draft. And then I'll preview the draft. It'll give me a new tab. And I can check. There we go. That opens in a new tab, which is what I wanted. Now, one of the things that we'll be doing later on in this course is also looking at interactive media. And you don't usually think of text as something that can be interactive, but there is a feature using a tooltip. So when you hover over a link, you can also have text show up. Now, just the fact of linking text does make it interactive as well. But this is an extra step that I think is worthwhile for you to learn about. However, in some tools, in some website builder programs or some blog types, you can add this within the editor like you have here, within the visual editor. In WordPress, however, you have to use the HTML side. So we're just going to walk through how this might work. So the first thing I'm going to do is switch from visual to text, HTML. And you don't see too much here that's different. If you were in another program, you would see paragraph tags around these paragraphs. WordPress allows us to be lazy because when there's a blank line it says, oh, that's a new paragraph, but I like to have the paragraph tags in there anyway. You'll see now that we've switched to the HTML side that these links we created for the word semantic and for visual rhetoric now have these tags around them. A space href, which is the URL location, and then target equals blank just means open a new tab. So what we want to add into here is some information that's going to show up if you hover over that. So we're going to use the element called title. Title equals and opening and closing double quotation marks. And I'm going to grab some text that I want to be displayed there. And I'm going to put that in. This title element is supported by almost all browsers. There have been occasions where you would need to use the alt tag to do this as well, but I think right now we're good with what we have. And I'm going to do the same for the visual rhetoric one. And I'll grab the text for that. So I've put that in. Let's save the draft. Let's hit preview, which will just take us to the other tab and update it. So now, if I hover over semantic, I get a short explanation of what semantics is. And then if I click, I go to the full Wikipedia article. So this is a handy way of supplementing your text so that readers have at their fingertips an explanation of a term that might be difficult for them, but by clicking away they can get the more in-depth explanation. You can also do this by using this tag, the anchor tag, the A, without this href element. So you don't have to link away. You can use this tag and just put in the title and this text, and you'll still get that tooltip text when someone hovers over it. The thing to remember about tooltip is that this doesn't work in most tablets and phones. There isn't a hover over feature when you're using a tablet with your finger or stylus. So one more thing that I think is worthwhile to learn about. In this unit, you're going to see a number of different ways that you can use or format text to create meaning in a page. And I think this is an important element of text because it's often sort of left behind in that people think there is nothing you can do with text to make it more effective as a means of communication. Some of the elements that are talked about in this unit are around creating boxes around text, aligning text to one side or the other. And this is stuff that sometimes can be done in a visual editor, but in the case of WordPress and many other tools, it's not actually very easy to do. So I'm going to do a quick explanation of some of the elements that you might use to do this in WordPress, and this method will work in other tools as well that allow you to edit directly within the HTML. So I'm going to take one of these explanations and just create it as a little call-out box, and we're going to put it over to one side. So we're staying in the HTML side, and I'm going to create what's called a div. And so I've put in those two tags, the opening tag, the closing tag. Inside that, I'm going to put in some text. And so I'm just going to put in this text about visual rhetoric. And I might put it within a paragraph tag. I might not. It doesn't It could have an impact on how it'll look, it might not. So that just creates a div, which is a placeholder. A div is just a box, a thing. It has no features other that would make it any different from a paragraph right now. But I'm just going to show you some simple styling you can add to this div to make it stand out. This is the sort of stuff that you can quickly look up, Google it when you need to be able to do it. This is not something you would expect to memorize. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a border. So I'm going to say the border is 1 pixel wide, it's solid, and it's black. Now in here I could actually use the word black. I tend to use color codes, but let's do that. So another thing I can do is I can make it float to the right and have text wrap to the left. Notice I use a colon to separate the element and then the value that I want, and I use a semicolon to end each argument. If I float it to the right, I don't want the text coming right up against it. So I'm going to give it a margin on the left. We'll make that 5 pixels, which should be plenty. So we'll save this draft, and we'll go look at the preview. And one thing that I need to do is I need to give this div a width, because it's just going to take the whole space if I let it. And you can do the width in pixels, or you can do it in a percentage of the width that's available. I'm also going to give it a bit of padding. That's an inside of the div, just to make it look a little better. Save the draft, preview. So here we have this box over on the right hand side now, and the text is wrapping on the left, and so this box stands out, which is quite nice. Another thing we can do to make it stand out is we'll give it a background color. Okay. Remember, HTML background color is the American spelling, not the Canadian spelling. And I don't have a really nice color just memorized, so I'm just going to say yellow. That's probably going to look not great. Let's see what we get. There we go. So it certainly stands out, but for day-to-day use, I would probably get the color code for a slightly more muted background color. But this is an example of how you might use a simple little bit of HTML to make something stand out over to one side, in a box with a border, background color. All of these things are ways that you can make your text stand out when that is a way of making it more effective for communicating. Now in this course, you're not expected to know HTML to do this sort of thing. For the text elements in this unit, you can use just Microsoft Word to play around with things and show how you would visualize or configure text and format text to get your message across. But I think it is handy to know how to do this in the tools that you use on the web. And it's not really difficult. It's the sort of thing where you maybe need to understand a few principles about writing this and be able to ask the right question of Google the next time you need to actually do it. Another great strategy is keeping examples of how you did something like this, keeping them filed away somewhere, and you can pull them up and just copy them and change the elements that are different to make them work for you. And in fact, that's, many of my earlier years, I did most of my more complicated stuff just by grabbing the last example I made and putting it together. Anyway, I hope you find the text unit really interesting. I know I think that it's great, and I hope that you are able to do some great stuff during this next week or so. Talk to you later.